economics, even informally, but I think time to start formally. So let me welcome you to the Friday webinar series that EGROW Foundation started about 4 years ago. And this is just when the COVID was starting. And as you know, the think tank is dedicated to research-based policy advice and research-based activities. With COVID setting in, we did initial research on COVID, what it means, and I think we were the few think tanks, or to my memory, the only think tank in our country which quickly said this could be something like the flu of the 1920s. And this could be really worst, and it could take 3 to 5 years. Once we started doing research on it, we realized getting people to office and all that is going to become difficult. The world is in a very uncertain phase. We started the webinar series. We have done about 220 webinars so far. We wanted to bring in a blend of the best minds across the world. Very fortunate to have achieved it. We have had Indian scholars, we had Western scholars, we had Nobel laureates come and speak on the webinar series. We did the G20 presidency last year, and under that, we were again very fortunate to do one series on new international economic order. We started one on climate. We could only do 6 of them. We planned 10. We still have 4 in mind, but that keeps getting delayed because other contemporary issues keep coming up and we devote time to that. We did another one on women empowerment. We have done 5 of them. 5 are still pending and again getting delayed. The point that I'm trying to make is EGROW Foundation is making an attempt to contribute into contemporary economic issues. The issues that we have discussed, we have done those which are pertinent to our own country and those which are pertinent globally and where we can contribute as a large emerging economy. As you know, the world is changing. The polar positions are changing. Asia is becoming extremely important. So we started a series where we said we are going to do countries in our neighborhood. And in that series, we have already covered Russia. We have covered China. We are covering Nepal today. And we plan to cover one a month, countries like Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and so on. Today's webinar is on Nepal. And with Nepal, India enjoys a very warm relationship. Actually, as far as Nepal is concerned, cultural relations, religious relations with Nepal have been very, very respectful. I would say very sacrosanct. And every Indian in his or her mind cherishes what Nepal is all about. To discuss about the Nepalese economy, we consulted, of course, the ambassador from Nepal, the former ambassador from Nepal, Mr. Manjeev Puri. And as per his recommendations, we thought we will invite Professor Achyut Prasad Wagle. And I had met him earlier and I knew he's the right choice. He is currently the registrar of Kathmandu University, the university which I visited way back in 2011. It's a fantastic university, and I think the best university in Kathmandu with the type of scholars that they have there. I was surprised when I was there. Many of the scholars had been to Delhi School of Economics and then gone back, either in master's or PhD, but very scholarly work being done in Kathmandu University. Professor Wagle earlier had held the positions of Associate Dean of School of Management and the Head of Management Science Department at the School of Management. He holds PhD in Economics from Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, MSc in Economics from University of Birmingham, UK, and MA from Tribhuvan University, Nepal. He has also held several important public positions, like the advisor to the Prime Minister of Nepal and advisor to the Governor of Nepal Rashtra Bank. I must say, Nepal Rashtra Bank another place which is very good, where lots of good research is done. And I have met them both when I was visiting Nepal, and they have their officers posted in IMF and interacting with them. Each one of them extremely remarkable. He is a seasoned weekly columnist to the Kathmandu Post, Kantipur, the most popular daily newspaper of Nepal. He teaches econometrics and other core courses on economics and research, and his research interests include business environment, regional economy, fiscal federalism, and entrepreneurship. To chair this session, we wanted somebody who knows the Nepal economy, and therefore we invited and requested Ambassador Manjeev Puri to be here to chair the session. He is a distinguished fellow and on the advisory board of TERI. He joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1982. It's an elite service, extremely competitive, and has served as Ambassador of India to various places, including European Union, Belgium, Luxembourg, Nepal, and as Ambassador, Deputy Permanent Representative of India to the United Nations. In addition, he has served twice in Germany, in Bonn and Berlin, in Cape Town, Muscat, Bangkok, and Caracas. From 2005 to 2009, he headed the UN Economic and Social Affairs Division in the Ministry of External Affairs of India and led the Indian delegation for the first meeting of the Global Forum on Migration and Development in Brussels in July 2007 and the presentation of various reports by India at the Human Rights Council. During 2011-12, when India served on the Security Council, he was a senior member of its delegation. Major areas of his experience and professional focus relate to the environment, in particular climate change and sustainable development. He was a lead negotiator for India at the United Nations on issues relating to the post-2015 development agenda, sustainable development goals, and the UN Conference on Sustainable Development held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in June 2012. He was a key member of the Indian delegation at various climate change negotiations, including the Conference of Parties of the UNFCCC in Copenhagen in December 2009, and before that in Montreal, Bali, Bonn, and Posa. Furthermore, he was closely involved with India's participation in the G8, G5 summits from 2005, and he was the points person on the Indian side at the Major Economics Forum. He did his studies at St. Stephen's, Delhi, and has been, whenever I go and meet him, I think a better economist than many in our own country. It's always a pleasure listening to him. With this, I hand over the session to Ambassador Manjeev Puri to conduct the proceedings further. Ambassador.
Professor Charan Singh, can you all hear me, please?
Yeah, it's fine here.
You can. Professor Charan Singh, thank you very much. I want to say a very big thank you to EGROW, not just for inviting me, for that to you, Professor Charan Singh, a very big bit of gratitude on my part, but thank you to all of you for maintaining and continuing to maintain your interest in Nepal. Now, I of course say it because I have a vested interest. I was India's ambassador to Nepal, and I believe I have a fine sense of both what is India's interest, relationships, as well as what I perceive are interests of Nepal for themselves. And I am particularly, appreciative of the opportunity that I was given as part of this particular relationship. But I want to say it for something else. I want to say that in my understanding, and this understanding is heightened in the changes that are taking place or the tensions that you are witnessing in the global geopolitical scenario today. The relationship of India with Nepal is a particularly important one, driven by civilizational links, driven by geography, driven by history, but without any doubt, in a huge manner sustained by economics. And that, to my opinion, is particularly important in a changing scenario. Professor Charan Singh, I want to thank you very much also for inviting Professor Achyut Wagle. Now, Achyut is a friend of mine. I am very delighted that he's here, and thank you, Achyut, for accepting the invitation of EGROW. I understand you have participated in one of the other of their seminars earlier. And I want to tell you, this is an unbelievably wonderful Friday evening session, which they've now conducted for some 4 odd years, which reaches out across the globe. Let me assure you that being one of the keynote speakers today, you are in the same league as most of those big names who have written all the famous books, whether it's professors from Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, or wherever, because that's the standard this organization brings. And I'm particularly delighted that we could have you here today. What particularly delights me is that you have both an academic experience, the rigor of academia, as well as practical knowledge of being as a dealer of economics from within the government, as being principal advisor to the Prime Minister, the Governor of the Central Bank, etc. And so we look forward to hearing from you. Now, to every one of you who was here, thank you very much for joining us. You know, I want to say this, and please excuse me for saying it. I am sure every one of you, including our colleagues who have joined from, I would take it, Bhutan. I see some people there, a few from Bangladesh. I'm sure there are some from Nepal. Everybody in India, in any case, the higher you go up, the more you think that you know Nepal extremely well, and you know everything that there is to know about Nepal. I am not sure about that. I am, of course, relatively more sure that most Nepalese who are observant know a lot more about India, simply because they study our country, unlike us who live the country. And that's the nature of this particular game. But, you know, before I hand over to Professor Wagle to give us an overview of Nepal's economy today as it stands, the challenges and the opportunities. And let me tell you, there are a lot of them on all of those fronts. And in particular, I would like him to touch upon 3 specific facets of international links. One is, of course, India. The other is something that occurs to everyone and is the burning question, China. But I would also ask him to speak about the rest of the world, the Western world, and the Nepalese diaspora and their contributions to the changing Nepalese economy. Now, Professor Wagle, before I hand over to you, dear friends, let me remind you of a few things. Nepal is a landlocked country. It has 2 land borders, India about 1,500 kilometers, and China, Tibet, on the other side, in the northern side, about 1,400 kilometers. By the way, almost an equal amount as far as India is concerned. It is a mountainous country. Both these things usually add up to a geography which you can't say is extremely advantageous, no matter that you sit between some of the largest economies in the world. Nepal's population is about 30 million people. If Nepal was situated in Europe, it would be among the 5 largest countries out there. Here we say it's a small country. That's simply because China and India, some 1.3 billion on either side, straddle it on both sides. Nepal's GDP is, and there, Achyut, don't mind my saying so, is a mere $40 billion. And a per capita income of perhaps less than $1,500. This is not a particularly wonderful state. It's about, I think, pretty low down, 160th or something like this on global GDP rankings in nominal terms, in terms of per capita income. It's also a country which has changed tremendously. Now in India, our general conceptions of Nepal are small country, which, as I said, yes, in terms of India and China, but not in global terms. In fact, let me tell you, in pure geography terms, a flight from the eastern part of Nepal to the western part of Nepal would be a longer flight than from Delhi to Bombay. And you won't say Delhi to Bombay is a short distance. The second thing I want to point out is, for all of us, what is it? It's a Hindu country. Yes, it is. 80%, 81% of Nepalese are Hindus, as compared to 79% in India. But who are the others? It's vastly different. Buddhism is the largest other. There is syncretic religious situation as far as Nepal is concerned. And as I mentioned out to you, it has shared land borders with India and China, and with both nations, it has civilizational links, no matter our understanding that it's a part of South Asia and all the links are south of the Himalayas. These are things which are a little important to understand. I think another point I'd like to make is that since the 1990s, when Nepal opened up to the world, and you'd all be very surprised, before 1990s, Nepalese couldn't get passports. So if you were not Professor Wagle and others who were well, let me say, positioned in Nepalese society, you won't get a passport to travel. The only people who really traveled this way were the Gurkha soldiers. But after 1990, the situation today is that possibly a quarter of Nepal's citizens are overseas, and not just in India, but across the world, in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia, in Australia, in Japan and Korea, in Europe, in the United States, doing well, working hard, and contributing. Let me say this figure, it's a staggering figure by these standards. Out of a GDP of 40 billion, the share of remittances is nearly a quarter, $9 to $10 billion a year. This makes it one of the largest economies in the world in terms of share of remittance. It's quite interesting, very different, something that we need to understand. This last point I'd make is Nepal, in comparison to India, which is the easiest point of comparison, certainly lacks physical infrastructure. And you would tend to see that high-rise buildings are not many, highways are very few. Electric power was a great problem. I'm not sure if things have improved. In fact, people used to say that isn't it strange that Nepal, which has an hydroelectric potential of 40, 50,000 megawatts, is actually importing power from India. Maybe that'll change soon as these Arun projects come on steam, etc. I don't know the answers to that. But the situation is that physical infrastructure is one which is really requires a great deal of upgradation. But at the same time, it is unbelievable to understand that the Nepalese are a society which is hugely grown. Everybody has connections overseas. Nepalese carry smartphones. Everyone is in touch with people across the world. The degree of empowerment would be one which astonishes most people in India. In fact, you cross the land border and you notice it for yourself. So it's political empowerment, women's empowerment. Each of these things are at a level which, sitting here in India, and I'm sitting in Delhi, one of the most developed places. Physical infrastructure, very different. But in terms of the societal changes, etc., which Nepal has seen over the last 25 years, they are amazing, absolutely worth noting. And let me make the last point, democracy. Many times we look at democracy, and democracy in our neighboring countries is particular as being, agents for all kinds of lack of stability, etc. And yes, Nepal has it, but let me tell you, it has a vibrant democracy. 2 years back, the Supreme Court of Nepal, dethroned the Nepalese government after it had passed legislation for dissolving the parliament. I mean, I'm leaving these thoughts for all of you. You draw your own conclusions. But democracy is quite strong in Nepal. It also has certain indications of some people in the street saying, oh, we'd like the idea of the monarchy coming back, which was removed in the early 2000s. But, the fact that there is space for all of this is the Nepal that you see today. Achyut, I hope I've done some degree of justice to the wonderful country which is yours. I'll stop now, and let me say, the screen is yours. We'll give you about 25 to 30 minutes. And after that, I would really like all of you in the audience, led by you, Professor Charan Singh and others, to ask questions. And let me make a point. Please ask questions freely. Please ask questions which come straight to the top of your mind. And let me say, Professor Wagle is broad enough to be handled all the kinds of issues that you may think of, including those which may not appear to be exactly politically correct. Achyut, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Saab. and Professor Singh for very generous introduction, and Ambassador Puri, you have done half of my job, I think. So just to take cue from Professor Singh's point that the global shift of power poles to Asia, I think we probably need to dissect that statement where exactly the actual power poles have shifted from west to the east. That's one. And the second point on Ambassador Puri's point is democracy. We have mentioned about Nepal-India relations in different other dimensions, but one of the strongest bond for future should be the democratic dispensation, the democratic principle that bind two countries. Why I'm saying this is after a lot of experimentation, Nepal adopted a new federal constitution in 2015 with, at least in constitution, the delegated powers to provincial and local governments. There is a huge autonomy, economic autonomy given to the local governments. So, actually in practice, those powers, those authorities needs to be translated into some form of the better public service delivery at the subnational level. So I think the democracy should be a big of connection between India and Nepal. I'm saying this because the ideological contestations in ruling Nepal have become a big issue. When I listen to both Professor Singh and Ambassador Puri, I think I'm a bit scared whether I would be able to meet your expectations in such a diverse canvas of things. But let me begin with a very humble kind of data. I have not crowded my slides with a lot of data. Can we move on to the slides? So the economic structure of Nepal is like the primarily the agriculture, then comes the retail kind of sales, wholesale and retail, and then if you come to the manufacturing, we have got very small contribution to GDP, which is only about 4 to 5%. We very often talk about tourism, but if you look at the tourism here is not much, because we are able to sort of attract the value tourist instead of counting in numbers. But it is an interesting country. There are 32 international airlines that operate to and from Kathmandu, and they all are making profit. So that is it. So when it comes to the economic growth rate and inflation, if we take an average of last 50 years, our growth rate has not crossed 4% on average. In some few years, we may have touched 7-8%, but generally the average is 4%. Inflation, fortunately, has not spiraled up any point in time above 2 digit or so, but growth is really constricted. One important aspect is I mentioned about we impact on the federal polity, but we have got the 7 provinces. But if you look at the GDP size of these 7 provinces, the province with the capital Kathmandu, we call it the Bagmati province, is still about 37-38%. And the most remote part, the Karnali, contributes only 4%, and others 7 to 10%. Other 4. So this is the. It is to say that when I say I have got some interest in research and federalism, actually the biggest challenge for Nepal is to economically federalize, really to give a sort of equitable structure to the federal dispensation and federal federal structure, federal architecture of the country. So disposable income, as Ambassador Puri was mentioning about, it has now calculated to be around 1,700. So, and one very interesting thing is whenever we talk about the Nepali economy, many of the Indian media and Indian friends ask me whether Nepal is likely to be Sri Lanka. Is it likely to be Pakistan? So one of the most resilient aspect, it is also linked with the fact Ambassador Manjeev Puri mentioned about equal to 30%, sometimes 25 to 30% of GDP equivalent comes from the remittances of the workers working mainly in the Middle East, Malaysia, and now the remittances have also started to flow in from a huge number of migrants from Australia, UK, which is a traditional source of remittance for Nepal, and US, of course, India is there. So at present, if you look at this graph of foreign exchange, we are about 15 billion billion US dollar reserve in our national treasury. So that is about 33% of GDP. That puts us in a very healthy position in terms of the foreign exchange. That is one. So I very often say that to all the experts that we are in no way on the path to Sri Lanka or Pakistan, for that matter, in terms of the foreign currency reserves. One important aspect I want to bring in here is the Nepal's trade. In terms of both export and import, India, of course, is the largest partner. About 67% of the foreign trade with India. That includes about 70% of imports and then the almost 60% of export to India. But the figures with China are dramatically increasing. If you look at the figures from 10 years, I have not brought in here the trend bar diagram, but the import from China is nearing 17%. So the import from other countries has drastically reduced. But when it comes to the export-import ratio, with India, it is pretty comfortable, but with China, it is 1:300. If we are importing $300 equivalent from China, we are exporting only $1. So, but that is, and that in contrast, it is about 1:10, I think, with India. So this is the trade figures. We are heavily import dependent country. The trade deficit is huge. For example, we import around, in official figures, as Ambassador Puri is mentioning, we have got the long border with India, and that is very poor. So informal trade is also huge. Informal trade data, only it is official data shows it is 1:10. That we are exporting $1 if you are importing $10, but unofficially it should be between 1:16 or 1:20 maybe. We never know. So this is again the chart I'm showing, the export-import trend in the next diagram. Now this is the debt to GDP ratio, one of the very dramatically increasing the public debt scenario of Nepal. This is definitely one of the worries for three reasons. One, it has increased by 17% in last 3 years. Now it is about 41, 42% of GDP, as We consider GDP is to be around $42 billion, and it is increasing. That's one. But another problem is that we are borrowing to meet the recurrent expenditure. It is not for the capital expenditure. That is one of the major concerns. And we are presenting about 35% of deficit budget, and the only source of meeting breaching that deficit budget is through the debt, external or internal. As you know, the sources of external debt have literally dried up, except for those multilateral institutions like World Bank and ADB. So there is heavy dependence on the domestic debt. Debt to GDP ratio is growing. In the next slide, if you look at the 2013-14 to 2022 to 23, so the bar would show that how the ratio is growing, which is indeed a cause of concern. One very paradoxical situation Nepal has is, of course, we keep on debating whether we are a poor country or not. One of the poverty is also explained by the fact that we are not being able to spend the budget allocated for the capital expenditure. If you see this revenue and expenditure for this current ongoing fiscal year, and if you look at this seventh column of capital expenditure, if it is visible to you, our fiscal year is about to end in next 20 days, and the capital expenditure out of allocation has only been 46%, which is really worrying. And this is for the federal government. That's one. Another, if you look at the first row of revenue, the government's performance in collecting revenue against the target is equally poor. So we have only few weeks left, but the revenue collection target has only reached 65%. So that means we are really in crisis, and that crisis is on the economic governance. Even we are comfortable in terms of balance of payment, in terms of foreign reserve, but we are not being able to mobilize even the resources we have. This will be a political kind of statement, but it is largely to do with, I don't have the confidence interval and then any kind of econometric recent data on it, but the political instability. During last, say, 32 years, we have changed 34 governments. So it is something to do with the institutional weakening, institutional degeneration of the implementing agencies, and then the crisis of confidence in bureaucracy, and the crisis of course, crisis of good governance, the corruption scandals, and the honest bureaucrats not willing to put ink on the contracts. Another important aspect is the problem of contract enforcement. The contractors not completing their jobs, and there is a big debate. The most of the international contractors that are not completing their work in time are the Chinese state-owned contractors. Like, for example, we are repairing one main trunk road leading to Sunauli near Gorakhpur, from one of the mid city of the country called Narayangarh, and the contract was supposed to the construction was supposed to be completed by this coming December, but the work progress, it is told, is only 36%. That is only one example of that. So there are other issues related to that: the cost overrun, the variation of orders and excuses after the contract been awarded, and the involvement of the governments to negotiate the added cost when these contracts run into trouble. That is one of the reasons Manjeev Puri sir was mentioning about the poor state of infrastructure. Okay, this is another is the capital expenditure and development. Why I am putting this slide here is that the red line above these blue bars is a percentage of the capital allocation out of the total budget. Now it has come down to 17% in 22-23. So this is one problem. The size of the capital expenditure is very small compared to the total allocation. So recurrent expenditure is higher. And there is another problem, capital allocation. The capital expenditure against capital allocation is equally poor. Like I showed in this year, it has only been about 45%. And the bad trend is replicated in subnational government, both provinces and local levels. I have taken liberty of putting this slide in that was developed in Devanagari script. If everybody is not comfortable, I'm sorry about that. The federal, the local, the provincial and the local levels. It is the about allocation. This is the 70% mark. So only the provincial level are reaching up to 68%, and the federal level is only lowest, and then the local level also have got problem in resource absorption, even the available resource absorption. So revenue and expenditure in percentage, the expenditure has always been higher. I have already mentioned that we are continuously presenting the deficit budget. The question of fiscal consolidation is there, which we have not been able to adhere to a lot. And I have said the development assistance, which is critical. And it is not coming by. Is it visible to you? I don't know. The external sources from the developed world has come down significantly. That is what I wanted to say. I have put one slide here, the foreign assistance historic data. A very interesting thing is that until 1985, India used to be the largest donor for Nepal. So this is China, India, USA, three largest donors. Was right since the 1958 to 1978, and it is just the trend. If you look at the India, the Chinese foreign assistance was almost less than half of what India provided, and almost how much would that be? The USA provided only about 2/3 of what India did at that time. But the scenario has changed. So if you look at the India and China, it's up to 18-19. So this is the foreign assistance thing, and USA has definitely fallen back on that. So now it comes to the foreign investment. For very long time, India was the largest foreign direct investor in Nepal. This is the data from the last fiscal year from the Department of Industries. So these are the top 10 foreign direct investors in the country, and these are the figures in crores. So this is some indication of it. But despite said anything, the foreign investment stock in Nepal is very low. It is only about how much would that be? 250 billion rupees, Indian rupees. That is about 400 billion Nepali rupees. That's the total foreign investment stock, which is very, very small compared to its GDP. So Nepal, of course, has not been able to contribute in a great. As Ambassador Puri was mentioning about, to talk something about geopolitics, Nepal has got the since it has got only two very big, powerful countries, we are in these three situations. So if there is a conflict between India and China, Nepal should be scared, being squeezed in between. That had happened when China and India were in war, and Nepal found very difficult to manage its diplomacy. That is the lesson or learning. I would not even say if you had learned any lesson, but that was our understanding from the history. Even if there is a great cooperation, so India and China would be dealing directly about themselves, and I don't know whether Nepal would actually be able to take benefits, because there are instances where China and India were in good cooperation in many of the issues. Nepal could not manage to get benefit from it. So if it's business as usual, also Nepal needs to work very hard uh, to get benefit from, at least from the growing um, economies, their growing living standards, growing connectivity, and then the hobnobbing between the two countries. So this is the scenario. And when it comes to South Asia, it is very, very important that as you all know, the intra-regional trade among the South Asian countries is less than 5%, and it is India where it should take lead, and that is one way of maintaining the regional supply chain where India should take the lead. Why I'm saying this is very recent times. It might be very harsh statement, but that's my God's feeling that lately there has been a very resigned approach towards Nepal in Indian foreign policy realm, particularly after 2015 economic blockade, and then its consequences. It has got the very two dramatic consequences. One, after that, I see a lot of anti-India feeling growing in Nepal, and then the influence of the northern neighbor has dramatically increased. That only created that vacuum. And it has only affected that. Second, whether we accept or not, the South Asian regional cooperation is almost dead. Whatever region, the 19th SAARC summit schedule for 2016 in Islamabad has not been able to take place. We all know it may be Pathankot, it may be China Pakistan economic corridor, the entry of China into the South Asia region with a big purse and big ambition of regional influence. But there was some effort during COVID. Prime Minister Modi wanted to revive SAARC level cooperation to tackle the pandemic. But I think this also has not taken off in more meaningful ways. So what we are seeing is we are talking about the huge potential of at present level of $3 billion trade among the South Asian countries to at least the $20 billion. This is the SCAP, the UN SCAP data. I have, if I forgot to mention the source. So it is important. Another dimension of the competition we are talking about, the China-India trade relations until 2022 were rising. But the trade balance, not only with Nepal, the trade balance should also be an equal concern to India. That is how I feel as an economist. Yes, there was a big ambition of taking Nepal-China trade to cross the 100 billion mark, $100 billion mark. It did, but actually when it reached to 136 billion, the Indian export was only 16 billion. So when we go to the digital era of the economy, driving the trade through the chips and the apps and so on, I think the entire region needs to look into through a different perspective. As I have already mentioned about the geopolitical side of it, we have not been able to promote the economic cooperation towards this in the southern cheek of the Himalayas, despite we are in the same river systems, same hydrological system, but we that is we need to probably look into differently. That is major region where Nepal is situated in between. Other efforts like BBIN did not take place. Of course, India's participation in RCP, the ASEAN Plus thing, did not materialize. What I'm trying to emphasize here is the BRI, everything China is trying to do in the countries like Nepal, Maldives, or Sri Lanka. They are putting every effort of cooperation under the umbrella of BRI. So that is one. Another is the competition of geopolitical competition that India is part of Quad, the Japan, US, India and Australia quadrilateral cooperation, and the also Indo-Pacific strategy. But have we been able to bring at least those democratic countries along this alliance, or are we leaving sort of some of the countries behind, despite the Modi's foreign policy like Sagar and neighborhood first? So these are definitely the question we need to relook into it, because the regional integration in these variables, as started by ADB, only side that has increased is the regional value chain. If we look at it, it has grown a bit from 2012 to 2020. I think in all other aspects, even including the environmental cooperation, which I'm going to touch in a while, other monetary finance cooperation, infrastructure, it has hardly progressed. There has been little progress in infrastructure that is driven by India-Bangladesh connectivity of road and openness, solution of those enclave issue. Has definitely region hope of stronger South Asia sub-regional economic cooperation, but we probably need to do a lot of homework in that direction. Yes, we should accept that the China is a new geopolitical factor in South Asia. It is not only trade. If you look at the total trade with South Asia region in $1 billion, and its trade in the regional global trade on this side of this, see the growth from 2001, trade with the South Asia regional country. So it is very fantastic to have a narrative. Okay, we do not compare, we do not have a sort of exercise to extend the sphere of influence, but these figures say something. The China factor, not only in Nepal, not only in India, in the entire South Asia has been very strong. And in Nepal's case, okay, so this is the trade, size of the trade, total size of the trade. Integration is increasingly becoming stronger, and the South Asian region is by now heavily dependent on the Chinese market for its import. This is the reason that the current trade deficit of South Asian region with China is nearly 146 billion, a jump from 8 billion in 2005. What percentage is that? I don't know, but it is huge until 2022. And Nepal definitely sits in between everything of that. One slide I had put it here. I think I'll come back to this slide, regional trade in education later on. Let me skip a slide here. So China versus India tourism. This is Nepal arrival of tourists in actual numbers. Definitely we have got Chinese tourist arrival is fairly higher than the Chinese one, but Chinese is also growing. This is after COVID, it is just picking up. Then one new development is that, okay, India say open border, we have got the foreign policy started from 2014 is there, but very recently the China has issued this notice in order to promote the friendship and further facilitate the personal exchange between China and Nepal. The Chinese embassy in Nepal will not charge Nepali citizens visa fee since May 1 to 2024. So India has got the open border, and this is a sort of free visa offer. I don't have comment on this. So when it comes to BRI influence, I have not only come into the BRI, the Pokhara airport constructed with Chinese investment. Now the Chinese are saying it is BRI, and the Gautam Buddha airport constructed with ADB's financial assistance, but by Chinese contractors, are virtually non-operational. The monthly liability of Pokhara airport is about $1 million per month, but it is not earning anything. And there is a sort of the issue related to aerospace, because India considers some kind of has got the security threat perception, maybe not willing to allow the air routes, the aerospace to operate international flights from these airports through direct air routes. They can land going through a sort of circling through an air route. So that is just an issue. The Nepal being in between we face. This is one statement. There is a lot of talk about Chinese rail coming to Nepal and crossing it to India or whatever, and talk about the Chinese intention. There is a quote from a former Chinese ambassador to Nepal, to one of the dailies called Naya Patrika Delhi. Ambassador Puri is familiar about it, I guess. It says, if the China-Nepal railroad were to benefit only these two countries, it would be uneconomic. The most ideal proposition would be to connect this railroad to Indian railway network, making Nepal the transit state between mainland China and the Indian subcontinent. This will substantially reduce the distance of cargo transit between China and India. So once again, we fear that we can only be transit, and we do not know how China and India would fare on their relations in the future. So I don't want to go into details, as there was a mention of about 902 megawatt Arun project built by Sutlej of India. And there are five hydro projects being developed by Chinese investment, 14 hydropower projects being developed by India. And finally, I think I have a bit run out of time, and I'll just look into it, because whether we like it or not, the cooperation, the future cooperation, if we do not cooperate in education, health, and tourism, and climate change, digital economy, both Nepal and India cannot take advantage of the very rapidly and dramatically changing global order. As we have got the strength of history, culture, proximity, the everything related to the age-old relationship, but we need to look into particularly the climate change, because the source of water in many of our major river systems are the Himalayas. They are also the disaster management efforts can only be aligned with those sort of planning. And then we are talking a lot about the hydropower development. We probably have to look into the risk side of it, whether if there is no snow in Himalayas in say next 40 years, what would be the future of those the heavily invested, not yet conceived big hydropower, essentially the reservoir, big reservoir projects. Also, the risk is of the seismic zone, highly seismic zone. Will we be constructing the water bombs in the name of high dams? Regional investment, which is very low, we probably rethink into it, and the regional supply chain. I think that can alleviate a lot of trade constraints. I actually wanted to take a few more minutes, but I have already run out of time. I stop here and look forward to your questions. I'll try to answer some of them within my limited knowledge and understanding. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Professor Wagle. That was absolutely excellent. And I'm very glad that you touched upon geopolitical issues, regional cooperation, and what exactly can we all do for mutual benefit. I think that was important. I want to draw everybody's attention to that beautiful slide, the India-China contestation, the three depictions. Professor Wagle, I hope you will recognize, and I'm sure you do, but I hope others recognize that, far from this being a geography of advantage, it is a pretty difficult geography. And that Chinese ambassador, whoever it was in 2020, actually said the fact. I was in a number of development projects outside Kathmandu, and wherever this so-called line was supposed to pass, people would be very jubilant. So I remember once telling the local MP that, look, if it does run at that 300 kilometers an hour, you won't even know that the train is through Nepal, not just your little city. You can keep getting the overflight routes and the charges. But, I want to ask you one question, and then I want to open everything up to everyone. You mentioned that Nepal is facing a massive challenge for revenue collection and in terms of its being able to spend on capital expenditure, even though budgets have been provided. To me, these are very important elements for which answers can lie within Nepal, not just because of political contestation, but in terms of perhaps looking at systems. A small question. India has embarked hugely on this digital public infrastructure business. We believe it has greatly helped us. I don't know the answers, but I think it has. As a citizen going outside, I think it has greatly moved things. Now, Nepal is a country where digital use and the use of smartphones, etc., is perhaps much more prevalent than India. Do you think a serious government program or digital public infrastructure, including for payments, taxation, collections, etc., might just be one of those small kickstart points which can result in the economy being run better, as you said, economic governance becoming one where we play politics, but let's at least see that economic governance, plays its part and delivers due. What do you think?
Let me, Ambassador Puri, thank you for the question. Let me break your question into two parts. First of all, Nepal's revenue system is very regressive. When I said this word regressive is, I already mentioned we are a heavily import dependent country. To meet the revenue target, we need to increase the import because most of the duties are levied on imports. So you need to drain a huge amount of foreign exchange to increase the revenue target. That's one. Second, definitely yes, the digitization of economy and the governance, I would say economic digitization of economic governance will be critical, including the management of the procurement. Again, despite a lot of efforts, the public procurement process, the digitizing the public procurement process has not been successful because of the seen or unseen cartels, political cartels exploiting those sort of things, and that has both reduced the chances of contract enforcement and the collection of the revenues. And another caveat definitely is, you have rightly said, there are a lot of gadgets that are useful, are being used by the public. But again, the amount of digital divide in terms of their ability to use these devices for productive purposes, for apart from using it for the entertainment and social media purposes, we need a very systematic digital education, particularly in the rural hinterlands. You might see a person carrying a very latest iPhone sent by her daughter or son abroad, but the whole use of it is only to receive the voice telephone, even not even for the texting. That's one. And then as you very rightly said, the efficacy of the public digital infrastructure needs to be increased hugely, including the digital security of this infrastructure. And as Nepal and India have put a lot of efforts in integrating the digital payment system in recent times, I hope they will transfer in very near future. That will also probably add a lot of value on it. Only a single thing, like I know the India also has faced a lot of challenges in implementing GST, but if we can integrate the GST data at the custom points in collecting revenue, that I think will help a lot to control the under invoicing import, which is I would say a lot of illegal import in terms of bill tampering and all. So that would help a lot. Thank you for your question. I think I don't want to go on very long. I hope I answered.
You're absolutely right. Digital is not the answer by itself. It's an enabler. Education, more than that, issues which are also quasi-judicial, legislative, ways of doing things, privacy, all of these come up. But let me now open up. May I request you all, at least those who want to ask questions, please, switch on your cameras and please feel free to pose your questions across economics, across geopolitics, geoeconomics to Professor Wagle. The screen is open to everyone.
Hello, sir. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Barkha Rotela. I'm from Uttarakhand.
Dr. Rotela, can you switch on your camera?
Yes, sir. Why not?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I have to go into the setting or something.
No, you just go ahead, speak.
I'm not able to do it, I think.
No, you speak on. Please go ahead.
Okay, sir. So because I'm an assistant professor of English literature, so I'm simply trying to take the conversation a different tangent. So, Wagle, sir, the whole conversation, the whole lecture was really enlightening. But my question, being a literature student, is, so in what ways do contemporary Nepalese authors address economics issues in their works? this is because I just want to ask you this question because I just want to do some kind of multidisciplinary, international kind of research work. So this is the first step of my, in this direction, my first step.
Oh, no problem, Dr. Rautela. So, what is your particular research interest? So I can probably answer on that line.
No, sir, because it's the seminar on economics. So because I am a big zero in economy, so I
That
was thinking that
can
I was, yeah,
literature,
yes.
so no problem. You can just specify your area of interest in research.
So actually, I'm very much interested in what are the major economic changes in rural areas of Nepal and how have they been reflected in local narratives and folklore.
Okay, that's great. So there are two things. One, the out migration areas to urban areas and from urban areas to other countries for employment has been the major demographic dynamics at present day Nepal. So that definitely has got its own narrative, two narratives. One narrative is that the diaspora literature has become richer because most of the capable authors, uh, interested creative minds have gone abroad and they have continued to contribute to the body of literary work. I would not say body of literature. So body of that is one, and second, the mostly the literary trait has been on depicting the compulsion and plights of the people to leave their original places of domicile or whatever, the places of their birth. So there have been two trends. Third, there is a very emerging trend of English literature depicting Nepal's realities and the creative scenes. So these are some of the aspects of the literary side of the economic dynamics. Definitely, economic is projected or presented in this or that fashion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Wagle, thank you very much for answering that. Dr. Odela, absolutely excellent question. I want to tell you, when I was there, I see Shuji Sakya somewhere amongst us here. You know, we did a very interesting program with Namita Gokhale, the Jaipur Literature Festival, involving some of these things, but from a generation before, from 100 years back.
Yeah.
And it's very good that you are focusing on this. You know, let's try and be in touch. We should try and find something and use Professor Wagle's extensive reach as even the registrar of Kathmandu University. Because, you know, at the end of the day, societies matter. And we, between India and Nepal, frankly, it's societies which are prevailing. And that's particularly interesting. Thank you. Others?
Yeah, I would like to tell you one more thing, sir. I'm very much involved as a principal investigator in a research work that is based on the fractured coexistence of a human and animal. So because nowadays, a lot of leopard problem is there. So I have somewhere connected my thing to the ecofeminism because I have seen a lot of ladies are being killed by the leopards here because they are doing a lot of work in the jungles. They are, they have to go there to fetch fuel and woods and all. So this is the thing I'm doing. So my basic mind goes into this multidisciplinary kind of things. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. I have the opportunity to see you online, and I hope that.
I just want to tell you, you know, not in the area of leopards, but in some other sets of factors across Chitaman, etc. Actually, a lot of this kind of work has been done, including by the forest departments in India with their counterparts in Nepal, the Wildlife Institute. So, you know, there are lots of people, but this is a specialized intellectual thinking, and happy to hear what you said. Sir, the screen is open to the others.
Thank you, sir.
I see some hands raising. Please ask questions.
Verma, is that right? Yeah.
This is Professor Satish Verma former RBI chair professor at Chandigarh, India. Sir, I must congratulate you first that your presentation has been quite analytical and at the same time quite informative also. Contains a lot of information. That's really excellent. But my question is quite simple, and like any normal person, I would like to know that, of course, the FDI and the trade flows, these indicate that there has taken place a dramatic shift of Nepal in favor of China, with India sliding down to second place over time. Well, you have given me the answer also. Of course, number of slides were there. But do you think that that is the real reason, or there's a change in some geopolitics as far as Nepal is concerned? So one question is this. The second one, let me complete the question. The second one, what are its future implications?
Okay. So let me, on the first question, I will say.
I think, please forgive me to be so straightforward. But,
that's fine. That's fine. I'll try to be. I'll not try to be diplomatic, to tell you.
I'm sorry. I have to so straight to you.
I have already mentioned the political philosophies, the prevalence of the political philosophies in geopolitics do matter. That we should accept that. If I have to mention that in numbers, if you look at our parliament, about 2/3 of the parliamentarians, sometimes maybe 57%, sometimes 67%, are the people with left indoctrination. So if you try to look it through that angle, you will find some kind of cooperation going bit dramatically to some direction. That's one. Second, as India and Nepal have always boasted about our cultural relationship, people to people, nuptial relationship across the border, other kind of exchanges, other kind of movement in terms of tourists of different kind. India has been one of the very attractive, at least used to be one of the most attractive hub for Nepali students of all levels. But these days, the dynamics of diplomacy, particularly from China, has changed from government to government to what they call it the brother to brother at the party level. So things are changing. That's second point. Third, I have already mentioned, you say harsh, I probably use the harshest approach. I see a very resigned approach of Indian diplomatic setup at present, until the things go to a certain boiling point. At least I have that sense when things are happening here. So what we're trying to mend, what we do is we mend things after they go really out of hand. So I think the kind of back channel diplomacy, the feedback system, based on the ideological aspect, I am saying. When I say, I don't mean that India should intervene in every small thing, but democracy be a common denominator in leading us to next level of things. So it is very important. I think the one is that the engagement I would say at all levels of it, the exchanges at all formal, informal level, and it is also perhaps time to put many things in written records. For example, when Ambassador Puri was there, I had a proposal. Let's have a on Nepal India economic history of Nepal India economic cooperation. We can talk. But generation or even this generation can enjoy. Those are the ways as an academician, at least I can say. I cannot say how politicians on either side of the border should behave. So that would be my answer. Thank you so much.
No, it was very good, Achyut, that you answered the question, because, it's important for us to also hear Nepali perspectives, not just our perspective. Of course, Verma Sahab, perspectives are individual. They don't necessarily mean that that's the only way. There are lots of issues. Relationships are complex. And if I can leave a thought at this webinar to everyone, please note what has been the single most important driver of geopolitical change in the world, and how almost similar set of things have come by, and who is the loser. Is it, if I take you back to the geopolitical cartoons, which Achyut Wagle had put out, the others are having a drink, either even when they are fighting. That's the nature of geographies which are, situated where they are. Well, let's turn around to others. Who else wants to ask?
I just wanted to make a point here. Ambassador is here, and so is Professor Wagle. I was thinking after this interaction, Professor Wagle, if EGROW wants to do a 4-hour or even a 8-hour, 1-day Indo-Nepal conference, would you be open to that idea, your university? We will bring in about 4 or 5 academic scholars, policymakers, and you could bring in 4 or 5. And we could do one leg in Delhi. We could do one leg in your university. What would you think about it?
We can definitely do that. We can definitely do that.
I think after this, I'll stay in touch with you and Ambassador Puri, and let me see if we can get it on the ground. Because that will bring in exactly the points which you and Ambassador Puri are talking, that as such neighbors with such cultural heritage and a history of relationship, I think so much need to continue with that close bonding. Sorry, I just thought I'll intervene, but I'm open to other questions that are being asked. Back to you, Ambassador Puri.
I see one camera on Mr. Rama Rao. Sir, if you want to ask, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. I am S. Ramarao, advocate, Board of India. I'm paneled as an ADS. Sir, Professor Wagle, your talk was excellent and very enlightening. Sir, my question is, what has been the contribution of Nepalese diaspora, which has well settled and assimilated in India? What are its repercussions? We love them very well. We tell you, we have very high regards. The Nepalese. Yeah. In fact, one of my students is a Nepal student who has qualified company secretary also.
Okay. I think I partly answered that question in my presentation. Nepali diaspora is contributing in every aspect, not only the remittances. They have been cultural breeze to the world, and they have performed very well in terms of academics, research, and the integrity of Nepali workers is appreciated everywhere in the world. And to be very honest, they are the ones who are holding this economy from collapsing, particularly in difficult times like a 10-year-long insurgency, during the COVID, after the earthquake, and as I mentioned, during the economic blockade as well. So they have been very instrumental. But only our concern being here in Nepal is the proportion of population. Like, we estimate that at least 20% of Nepali working age people are out of the country. As Dr. Rautela was mentioning, that the C is on the feminism, environment, research. Nepal has become a very interesting country. There are only women villages, because all working as young people have left, and they have to manage everything from household to environment to their agricultural thing. So there are issues related to social disintegration due to the high number of migration. It has got the both plus minus, but living standard is said to have increased due to the inflow of remittances. These are the topics of very extensive research, but generally Nepali diaspora has been a very, very big contributor for Nepalese economy and the economic and social change in whatever way in Nepal.
Say, anyone else would like to ask something?
There are some questions probably in the inbox, but can Vivekji help me to, if there are really questions? I didn't bring my specs, so
Vivek, can you help us with
Professor Wagle, I can help you. There's a great question which I thought many of us are struggling with even in India, and that is a question from Devi Prasad. If Devi Prasad is there, you're welcome to ask your question. Otherwise, I can read it from the chat box. So the question is, Devi Prasad, can you ask your own question? I can see you on the screen.
I can't see the chat box.
The question is the growth of Nepal affecting sustainable development? You know, many countries have started talking of degrowth, and Nepal is in a position which is so green, population pressure is not high, and it's very, very development oriented. But development has always been concrete. In that sense, is the growth of Nepal affecting sustainable development? Well, that is how I interpreted the question, unless Devi Prasad has a different question.
I find two meanings of sustainable development. One is defined under the 17 goals by the United Nations. From that parameters, we may not be able to meet, like in the Millennium Development Goals, because they run up to the 2030 to meet to be able to achieve these sustainable goals. Our annual outlay of budget is required to the tune of $20 billion, which is impossible on that side. But when it comes to the general term of the sustainable development with not destroying the ecosystem, the forest layer and others, since we are very slowly industrializing, we don't have a lot of polluting industries, so we are not destroying the environment in that degree. I think that's one aspect. Another aspect is whatever we have developed in terms of infrastructure and all, that is also the question of sustainability. I think we're able to repair, keep them up and running. So there is a challenge given the resource constraints and the resource mobilization inefficiencies. But one particular area, that is hydropower. The private sector investors are investing a lot. Out of 3,200 megawatts so far generated, about 2,000 megawatts are generated by private sector. Now they are trying to change, the government is trying to change the law so that the private sector can also invest in the transmission lines and the customer care. So these are definitely the emerging side of it. That means when we have got only renewable electricity we are using, about 99% of the electricity we are using is from hydropower. So these are some of the practices of sustainable development, I guess. Thank you.
Achyut, if I may just say so, your per capita emissions and all those parameters are among the lowest.
Yeah.
But you know, there are 17 SDG goals. And one you may be doing very well on, but you need to do a lot on the first 3-4 goals, whether it's education, it's health, it's nutrition, it's hunger, and so on. So as you said very rightly and very well, we need to look at this word sustainable, you know, in a much broader context. Professor Charan Singh, if you agree, we are at 5:30, the allocated time for this. May I, on behalf of EGROW, say a very big thank you to Professor Achyut Wagle. Very big thank you to everyone. And I'm very glad that we are ending this particular webinar with the possibility of continuing EGROW's engagement with Nepal. And as you very rightly and very beautifully offered, even taking it to in-person, far more closer, and an orientation where we can not just discuss matters, but try and suggest to the world solutions and ways forward. I think that's particularly important. So I want to thank everyone very much. To you, Achyut. Thank you very much for finding the time. All good wishes to you, all powers to your elbow. Thank you for an excellent presentation, as has been noted by everyone in the chat box. From my side, thank you very much, EGROW. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you, Professor Charan Singh. The screen is yours, sir. You have the last word.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador Puri, for suggesting Professor Wagle and also agreeing to chair the session. Thanks, Professor Wagle, for giving us such an excellent presentation on Nepal and capturing such a huge topic in about 40 odd minutes. Very, very impressed and really want to thank you from the depth of our heart. We'll have the presentation and the online discussion by about noon. So you are welcome to use it. And of course, I'm going to share with many of my friends because it's been so informative. Next week on a Friday, we are having a new government. So we are going to dedicate 90 minutes to pre-budget discussion. So we are going to have people from Northeast, from Deep South, from North, and all over the country. There'll be scholars who will be talking to us and making pre-budget suggestions for the union budget, which is expected to be presented by between July 15 and July 22nd. So I would invite you on the panel. We'll have about 5 people, but if you have suggestions, please welcome and present your thoughts on the discussion on pre-budget analysis. From July 5 onwards, we'll have different talks, but from July 5 onwards, for 10 webinars till 16th of August, we will have a discussion on a very important topic. In India, Punjab economy has suffered the most and gone down from number 1 to number 12 in a rank of 28 states within a span of 20 years, 2 decades. In the meantime, states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Haryana, Karnataka have come up. So we are dedicating a series, which means 10 Fridays, of what are the factors that Punjab has suffered from number 1 to go down to number 12 in 2 decades, and what are the factors that have played a key role for states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Haryana to come so much up on the ranking. So I would like to invite you, and all these 10 webinars will be between 4 and 5:30 p.m. So I would request you to please pencil in your diaries that this discussion of growth suffering and growth taking place. What are the policy issues? And we'll have the best of the minds in the country of these states coming and talking to us what they think has played a role in this whole exercise. So I would like you to please keep joining us at EGROW, and this will help all countries in the world if we are able to reach an analysis of what are the factors which take you down and what are the factors that take you up. So I would invite you all. I know today people have joined from different countries, from Nepal, Bangladesh, we had somebody from Sri Lanka. So we have people join from different countries. So I would like you to continue joining us and taking advantage of this. So have a great weekend and see you next Friday. And finally, thanks to the chair of the session, Ambassador Puri, thanks to the main speaker, Professor Wagle, and each one of you who raised the questions either in person or put it in the chat box or encouraged us through your observations of excellence. And that is how we keep going. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Puri, for suggesting my name. Thank you, Professor Singh. I hope I could at least to some extent meet your expectation. See you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.